Wow, you guys really like this video. Alright, I'll make more like them. So I've been working in sports video games for a long time, and what I realized is that I never run out of things to talk about. There are always things that fascinate me here and there. So today I want to talk about button configuration. Wait, don't leave if you're new. Since button configuration alone is a video game topic that I could spend hours on, I want to condense it to just basketball games. I think that basketball video games is a good place to start because there are few other sports video games that have evolved as much as basketball, in my humble opinion. Now, if you played basketball video games over the last couple of decades, you'll notice that the control schemes change depending on what game you're playing. It's not a uniform thing. If you're like me, who's been playing basketball video games for the better half of 2 decades, you probably have an ideal control scheme in your head. I want you to hold on to that because we're about to go on a roller coaster of different interpretations of what a basketball video game should be controlled like. If you're new here, welcome in, and if you know me, welcome back. Thank you for indulging me about talking about quirky things in sports video games. I hope you stay along for the ride. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I appreciate you guys. The goal is to get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and if we don't reach that, it's okay. It's fine. All right, back to the video. Also, for those of you that prefer podcasts and stuff, I have a podcast version of my YouTube channel on Spotify, so feel free to go follow that, rate that as well. Back to the video. I want to make a disclaimer that this isn't a complete guide of every button configuration in every basketball video game. I'm just going to talk about a couple I like, a couple I don't like, and if you want to fill in the blanks, feel free to comment. I appreciate you guys commenting on my sports history video. Now, before I start, I just want to say that this is not the complete history of every button layout in every basketball video game known to man. I'm just one guy. I also will not be talking about arcade games because the button configuration is pretty self-explanatory. I'm talking about A equals pass, not shoot equals shoot. You see what I'm saying? All right, let's get to the first game. Now, one of the earliest game series I'm going to talk about is the NCAA Final Four series. This is like PS1. This is NCAA Final Four 99. Now, also before I continue, I want to stress that I'm talking about default controller scheme. I know that I can switch the configuration around all I want. I'm talking about default. I want to talk about what they imagined would be the best button layout for you, the player. So I think the first thing that stands out to me is that shoot is actually the X button, while pass is the circle button. And don't look at my controller, I know it's not an authentic one, bear with me. What I'm more fascinated about here is that pump fake and protect ball are their own buttons. Now, turbo being R1 is kind of synonymous for video games today, but they also have a modifier for special dribble and shift. Now, on the defensive end, you can see here that jump is actually the X button, while switch is circle. Steal is also square, and then triangle is this thing called auto defend, which I think I just want to say is like a lock-in button, like lock in, brother. But yeah. And for a lot of these video games, the controller layout does represent where video games were at the time. You have simple button layouts for simplified games. I also want to say here that the right thumbstick is used for shooting as well. It's another option. But yeah, all things considered, this control scheme does reflect a video game that was made in the late 90s. Now, I was going to go to NCAA Final Four 2001 and see if there's any differences, but nope, same control scheme. Moving on. Now, NBA Live had a different idea. For example, pass and shoot were reversed. Pass is X and shoot is circle. I understand why earlier games had X as jump and pass because jump in other video games is usually X, but in basketball, we've had more interpretations of X being pass. This is one of the standards in like every other video game at this point. Now, there are some very interesting button configurations here as well. Select is call for a pick, and they also have a stutter step button as well. And it's always interesting to watch the earlier evolutions of NBA Live. While this was peak basketball video games at its finest, it still looks very stiff. I also want you to notice how the left analog stick and the right analog stick aren't really prioritized in the control scheme function. We'll get to that later. Now, while NBA Live was out here and thriving, they had competition. And of course, I'm talking about NBA 2K. Let's go to NBA 2K2. And as you can see here, 2K had their own interpretation of what their controls should be. Shoot is now square instead of circle, and circle is dribble move. NBA Live has that reversed. Also, I forgot to say that I'm going by PlayStation 2 controls right now. I'm sorry if I caused any confusion for you Xbox havers, GameCube havers, whatnot. And also you could see here call for pick is not select, but it's L2. Now, turbo being R1 is pretty standard, but there's also a function here about passing to the player that's closest to the hoop, which is one of my favorite control schemes in video games, easily. Now, as we can all see the similarities in R1 being turbo, but being able to pass to the player closest to the basket is also very important, and it's one of my favorite control schemes, especially in these earlier video games. It allows you to push the tempo and push the pace. The fun thing about all these different control schemes is that it reflects each game. They all play different. It's all basketball, but it's all different versions of that basketball, and that's something that I really appreciated back then. But the thing about these video games in this early stage is that they're not using all the buttons to their fullest potential. They're not using all the controls at their disposal. And with all this competition, each game needed to find their own unique twist to the rest of the controls. They took some inspiration. Now, while I continue, I'm going to stray a little bit from the path of normal basketball games for a little bit. It's time to talk about the influence of street basketball in video game form. In the early 2000s, street ball was sweeping the nation. It had enough hype to have multiple video game titles centered around street ball. Now, I want to talk about each of these street ball games and their implementation of the right thumbstick. Let's start with Street Hoops. Now, Street Hoops may have had controls for in-yo-face and mad skills mode, but if you look down here at the right thumbstick, it's used for directional passing, which is what I find very interesting right now. This game was made in 2002. Since street ball is a more creative game than basketball, these developers had to get more creative with the control schemes themselves. Also on defense, the right thumbstick is used for the last man back button. If you're interested in street ball video game videos, let me know and I can do a whole different tangent on that, but I'm going to keep it moving. And even while it's not in the menu, NBA Street Volume 2 also uses the right thumbstick as a directional pass. Now we're going to skip ahead to NBA 2K6. Now 2K6 had two buttons. They had pass, which was X, and then you had lead pass, which was circle. They also had a thing called dual player where you could set them up for a give and go or a pick and roll, and that was really confusing to me at the time as a kid. I didn't really understand how the control scheme worked, but I want to lead you over to the bottom left hand corner of the introduction of the shot stick. Now the shot stick gave the player a little bit more autonomy in terms of what type of shot they were taking. Let's say you wanted to take a left-handed layup. Before playing 2K, you weren't able to actively control that, but now you can move the right thumbstick to the left, call for a controlled left-handed layup. It was cool. It was revolutionary. They also had something called dual player control, which allowed you to control the movement of a second player while you were dribbling with another player. Now, the shot stick had different directional inputs for different types of shots and dunks, and in the game manual, they explain it very well. Now, NBA Live 06 went a different route. The right thumbstick was used for crossover dribble moves, as well as being a modifier for freestyle superstar controls. Now, also, as I make this, the dunk and layup are one button. Remember that now. This will be important later. Now, freestyle superstars were a modifier that tried to specify certain types of players. So let's say if you're a flashy passer, you had an access to different animations with the freestyle superstar modifier plus certain buttons. And if you did certain buttons, it would do certain passes, and it was a really cool idea in NBA Live 06. NBA Live 07, not so much, but I do want to make a detour. In NCAA March Madness, floor general play calling was something where you could hit up on the D-pad and have an extensive amount of plays that you could run. It was very fun sets. It was a fun way to make basketball seem more realistic to the college game, and you could customize all of those plays and sets before the game started. I think it's pretty cool. Now we're gonna get to NBA Live 07. NBA Live 07 pissed me off. Now I already have a video out, which is me complaining about the NBA Live gameplay mechanic, but the TLDR of that is that they made the dunk and layup two separate buttons, which, if you've been paying attention, is not a normal mechanic ever. Now, if you want to go watch this video later, be my guest, but I do not like this control scheme at all. It's too complicated. It makes the players think a little bit too much about the controls instead of actually playing basketball, and it's very frustrating for everyone involved, in my opinion. By 2K10, 2K11, they kind of had the basic controls down pat, but they started to experiment into advanced controls, whether it's alley-oop or off-the-bounce alley-oop. And with these games, the use of the shot stick has expanded into so many different types of moves. It kind of often resembles those Dragon Ball Z games where you have to pause and learn all the combos, but not as complicated. Now, I want to talk about my favorite part of the advanced controls, which is the passing. 2K has so many different types of passing just tied to the controls, and it doesn't get in the way of the other controls that are assigned. With modifiers, whether with the combination of the thumbstick, it's really fascinating to be able to throw a lob pass, a bounce pass, a flashy pass, whatever you need. And it's something that I don't think the 2K community uses to its full advantage all the time. Now, if you go to the recent 2K games, they have controller settings and advanced functions for basically everything. Pro stick function, pro stick orientation, off-ball, offense mode, whatever you have it, you name it. Controller schemes have gone from very simple in the 2000s to very intricate like in 2024. And I think that the leap that we've made over the couple of decades is very impressive to say the least. Now, was every control idea a good one? No, but I appreciate each and every studio's willingness to experiment with the different buttons, because without that, we wouldn't get to where we are today. Thank you guys for watching to the end of my video. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with anyone that you think would like this video. I appreciate it. Have a good one, y'all. Bye!